POW camps occurred throughout the world in World War II. The areas we will be talking about are the United States of America, the Atlantic Theater, primarily Germany, and the Pacific Theater, primarily Japan. During World War II, over 140,000 white soldiers and civilians were held captive under miserable conditions in prisoner of war camps located throughout Asia. Starvation, punishment, beatings, work, and disease killed 1 in 3 of these brave men and women. Another important part of history that occurred through Japanese-run World War II camps was the Bataan Death March, which occurred in 1942. 76,000 Allied troops, commanded by General Edward King, disobeyed orders and surrendered to a group of 54,000 Japanese soldiers on the Bataan Peninsula in the Philippines. This was the largest single military surrender in United States history. At dawn, before General King turned over his pistol to the Japanese, Colonel Muto Nakayama promised the King's soldiers that they would be well treated. However, it is evident this was not the truth. The Japanese proceeded to force the march 90 miles to Camp O'Donnell. Any soldier who lagged behind was executed. Only 54,000 American and Filipino troops survived the march. The rest died of beatings, starvation, exhaustion, malnutrition, dehydration, untreated wounds, and execution. After the surrender of Japan in 1945, an Allied commission tried General Homa for war crimes. He was found guilty and sentenced to death. This was mostly because of his actions in the Bataan Death March.
Japanese Americans were interned in the United States only because they were of Japanese ancestry. After the attack on Pearl Harbor, a united scare on Japanese Americans occurred. These Americans were thought as being spies, being an inside source to Japan. On February 19, 1942, President Franklin Roosevelt certified the internment with Presidential Order 9066. All the Japanese Americans on the West Coast were to be interned in the vacant military camps. Life in the camps was not easy, at least not in the beginning. For example, the Topaz Public Library, which was located in a camp, started with 5,000 books and added 2,000 more throughout the Japanese American internment. The people had to fight for everything. When someone would be cleared to leave, people would fight for the sleeping space. One lady that was interned said, "In Block 28, we doubled our living space, 4 rooms for the 12 of us." Living on a camp, the Japanese played a lot of baseball, softball. They also attended the movie theaters and read the camp newspaper. Baseball was big. They even had organized teams with uniforms. Japanese Americans could get out of being interned, join the U.S. military. Some joined while others filed lawsuits saying their civil rights had been violated. Japanese American soldiers in the military often had their own division. They were racially separated from the whites, even though they were fighting for the same cause.
A prisoner's main goal was to escape. One example of a great escape that we all know of is the escape from Sobibor. Well thought out of plan. Also, they need to limit the amount of people they tell until the escape is ready to be executed. A good way to escape was to make escape organizations. They used fake uniforms and they just left the camp. One of the hardest camps in Europe to escape in World War II was Colditz. It was referred to as inescapable. At the camp, Franz von Vera was the only successful escaper. In Germany alone, there were 30 camps during World War II. When prisoners arrived at camps, they had identity checks and were required to change clothes. Also, they were listed alphabetically. An astonishing fact I found was that 91,000 German troops alone were captured by the Soviets after the Battle of Stalingrad. Also, the total death toll among prisoners of war during World War II was estimated to be in between 6 and 10 million people. Germany had the most prisoners of war during World War II. They estimated to have around 11 million.